or some of the rest of us that went to country school together, we could just have some of the best times and laughs and things. So I have great memories of Olive Branch School.
How you doing? I'm fine.
Yeah.
I do have questions for schools. Where and when did you teach country school?
Oh, you want to go on with that?
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
Now that's why I ask if your time. We can not do it, or we could do it another day. Or I'm really thinking, a lot of it might be the same, but we could do it another day too.
Okay, but now I will just go ahead
Okay.
because it was very different.
Okay, but we don't have. If you get tired, when
Okay.
you say stop. Okay. Do you want a break?
No.
Okay.
I'm okay.
All right. Where and when did you teach country school?
I taught 1 year in 1954, 55, and it was north of Clarinda, about 6 miles north of Clarinda, and the school was called Van Deventer. It was named for the family that had given the land.
Would you spell that for me, Van Deventer?
Vandeventer. Vandevandender. And that was the name of the family. Now, like with my school, when that was set up, when they made it in 1856, the families paid $1 a month per child. And that's what the money that they had to pay teachers with. And they were having trouble at the beginning, not having enough. And so the bigger boys went, particularly that through the winter months, and then that gave them just enough money then that they could afford a teacher. I forgot to tell you that on my school.
Okay.
Now I know that happened because that's in our ancestry history.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this Van Deventer family probably donated the land's the reason it was named that, but I'm not positive on that.
What were your room and board arrangements as a teacher?
Well, I was married at the time and I had a baby girl, and we lived in Clarinda in an apartment. And my husband was going to junior college, just starting, well, he was doing his second year of college. And so we lived in an apartment.
What did you wear to school?
Well, usually skirts and blouses, or sweaters and skirts, and sometimes slacks.
More off, do you have more to depend on the weather?
Yes, that would depend upon the weather.
What time did you, now how did you get to school then?
I drove our car.
So do you remember what time you had to leave?
I left, I guess, about 8:15, I think.
Do you remember anything special along the way?
This was on going up 71, so it was north of Clarinda, but it was still on Highway 71. Well, you always, you know, the farmers in the fields and the different seasons and farm animals. I listened to the car radio. We did have a car radio. And crossed the Nottoway River, so you could see the river part of the way.
Did you ever have any trouble getting to school?
Well, it happened, it was a mild winter, and unfortunately that helped. I remember the road being muddy a few times, but it wasn't impassable.
Would you say your schoolhouse and its surroundings were very similar to this where you went to school, or were there some differences we should talk about?
Well, it was quite similar. They didn't have as much playground equipment. Um, and they had a kind of a shed, like that they kept the coal and cobs and that kind of, well, they didn't, well, what's what they would have used to do it. This schoolhouse had an oil burner. So I didn't have to make the fire where the teacher did at the other school. But one thing that was different on this one is one kid's grandpa was a car salesman, and he had taken in, I guess, an old Pontiac, although it wasn't a really bad shape one, it looked good. And he just gave that to the school, and he just parked it out there. So the kids could get in this car and play and act like they're driving it. And we'd eat our lunch in there sometimes. We'd just go out and sit in that old Pontiac, and it was kind of turquoise color and a lot of chrome. And I saw the kid this summer, and I said, I asked him more about that car. And I don't know, we were just thinking it wouldn't have taken much to have gotten that car to run, I think, for somebody. But anyway, that's where it was.
What tasks did you do before the children arrived?
Well, if, you know, in the winter, of course, I'd have to turn the oil burner up to get that warmed up. And get a bucket of water in. And I'd put things on the chalkboard, I think, what they were going to do. And I had a typewriter, and so sometimes I'd type out quizzes or tests for them.
What did you do once the children started to arrive?
Well, it was just, I was just, there. See, this was a very small school. So I just go and greet them, and, you know, we'd just talk about whatever was going on at home or whatever, just, I don't remember anything really special. It was just,
About how many students did you have?
only had 6 most of the year.
When did your school day begin?
Well, I was going to tell you on this 6, it happened, fortunately, there were only 2 in each grade.
So you just had 3 grades.
I had 3 grades.
Which 3 grades did you have?
I had 3rd grade and 5th grade and 6th grade. And this is fortunately because, see, I have this baby girl at home, you know, so.
And where did she go during the day?
She went over to my sister's.
Did you make that stop on your way?
Yes, I'd have to make that stop. All right.
As you think about this building and the building you went to school in, can you think of any differences? Were they pretty similar?
This was a smaller school than my Olive Branch was. And then it had the oil burner, so we didn't have that big old furnace that took up a lot of the floor space. And the teacher's desk was over to the, let's see, as you come in, it was over to the left-hand side as you faced the front. And the chalkboards were all up there in the front. And it had a little stage area across. So the teacher's desk and then where they would sit for reciting classes, they were up on this little stage. It wasn't up very high, but it's just that it was separated. And hardwood floors. And so it was very nice. It was wallpapered too, with just a light color. And there was a piano in there. And we didn't have, very many students, but we put on a big Christmas program and whatever, just same way we did. I guess I didn't ever tell you on
We
that
didn't
other
talk
one.
about that. Do you want to go back and talk about that?
Well, The Christmas programs were always, we would work on those. And, but we even had a band, I can't think of the name for our children's band. And I played the triangle, was the instrument that I played. And some of the little kids played the sticks, and then there were well anyway, so we do some band numbers, and I remember I said a poem one time, and we didn't ever be a play or two, and we had the big curtains, that we draw the curtains across, and it was always quite a production. So when I was out at this Van Dievener school, we only had the 6, but we had a little play or two, and we had songs we sang. One song was "All I Want for Christmas Is My 2 Front Teeth," and I'd gotten some, I don't know, it kind of like blackjack gum. And the kids covered their front teeth with this black gum, and then they sang "All I Want for Christmas is My 2 Front Teeth." "I Wish You a Merry Christmas," that was a new song about that time. That I remember them singing that. Then my nieces and nephews, my family all came out for the Christmas program. My little nieces and nephews got up and sang songs too. Okay.
What supplies did you have in the school where you taught?
Well, we had more colored paper than when I went to school, and I just don't remember if they had some jars of paint, but I almost think there were some jars of paint that we wouldn't have had over in the other school. But the kids had their own crayons, each have their own box. They didn't have to share, and scissors, and I remember I had the kids doing soap carving one time for a project. And, let's see. What else do you want me to say?
Did the students furnish about the same things that at that time as you did when you were a student too?
Yeah, they would have even probably spiral notebooks, I think, probably by that time. And if not, I know they had the 3-ring notebooks. And then ballpoint pens were out by that time then. And so we didn't have bottles of ink anymore. Stick pins. And they would have their own scissors.
What activities began the day once the students were in their seats?
Well, I believe we did the flag salute, and we had sharing time, and sometimes I would read to them. Usually, I always read after lunch when we'd come in, and I would read to the children then in a part of a book. They liked Nancy Drew mysteries for some of it, and there was a book, Bridie of the Grand Canyon. There was another book, I don't know, some just good stories that they like. And that gave them a chance to cool down from being outside running around, and if they needed to finish up some work, they could do it quietly as long as they sat quietly, and I just would read for 15 minutes probably.
How did you structure the school day's lessons?
Well, you see, you just didn't have but the 3 classes, so I would start with those, they were both little boys in that 3rd grade class, and I would start with them, and then the others would know what, they needed to be working on, and see some of those assignments I'd have up on the chalkboard. So it's way different. You didn't have kids just learning to read, and yet you didn't have the great big kids either. So it was a unique experience.
Can you be very specific at all on how you worked with children? How you would have taught a lesson?
Well, let's see. What subject are you thinking about?
Any subject you want to think
Any
about.
subject.
But reading's always a good
Okay.
subject. You've got a story to read with them. Were there special vocabulary words you would have introduced?
Yes, on the reading, yes. You would definitely have the vocabulary. And sometimes I would have them, they knew some of the words, or they'd looked them up ahead of time. And then when they came up, why then I would give a meaning. They couldn't look at their papers, but I would give kind of a meaning, and then they'd have to write which one of the words that matched up with. And just kind of a reverse method there. And then sometimes, I'd have them draw a picture that went along with the story, or sometimes little dramatizations. Sometimes read orally. I always tried to just mix it up a lot.
And what type of desk work did your students do while the others were working with you?
Well, then see if I would take then the 5th grade, then those 3rd graders I had just been working with, then they would have things to follow up then at their desk. And again, I had things on the chalkboard for what then the 6th graders would be working on. And then they could always, read a book, or, do some other activities. I think I had other kind of puzzle sheets around too for fast workers. It's been a long time, I've kind of forgotten how all that went. We
Did
were
the-
still diagramming sentences, I remember that, and that was always, put that on the chalkboard and have the kids come up, and they did that on the chalkboard.
Did the experiences vary very much between the grade levels? If you had 3rd, 5th, and 6th, would it have been pretty
Not a
similar?
lot on that, no. That was what was such, that was one reason I could take that job and still be a mother and a wife.
Do you know what happened to that school then with their 6 students? Was it able to stay open very much longer?
Well, all of the schools in Iowa closed about that same time, early 60s. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about, I don't know about at this school, but the other school, the women couldn't be married and teach country school.
Then how come you snuck in?
Well, no, I was saying, see, I think it changed by that
Oh,
time.
I see.
But back at the other time, the women could not teach
Do you think
because
the war
the men needed the jobs, and then but when the war came, then that's when that got changed. And they didn't think that a woman could take care of a husband and a family and work. But it's sad to think, but that was the way people felt then. Another thing we did at Olive Branch was, I think one day a week we'd say Bible verses. They'd go around and we'd say Bible verses. And we had one boy that their family didn't go to church. So he'd always do the shortest verse in the Bible. You know that one, Jesus wept.
Jesus wept.
Whenever it come around to this kid, he'd say Jesus wept. But, you know, I still know him, see him when I'm down that area, and he's a wonderful Christian man, so he got the message eventually.
Were there any activities you particularly enjoyed leading?
Well, when we did the Indians there at this last school, like I told you, when I was little, we made little small teepees, just little twigs and some little gunny sack stuff. But there at that school, we made a teepee big enough that kids could get in, and it was just that it was a lot bigger. We had some bigger poles, and then I still think we used a lot of gunny sacks, but either that or we had some old muslin or something. That was one thing we did, I know.
Would the children have made that themselves then, with
Mostly,
your help?
yeah, oh yeah, they did most all of that.
What were your favorite subjects to teach?
Well, I liked arithmetic and spelling and geography.
It didn't change much.
No,
did it?
no, that's still my favorites.
What was your least favorite?
Oh, probably science and grammar.
You didn't like
I don't know,
doing
some of that stuff's just
The
sort
sentence
of,
diagram.
yeah, right.
Did you have any helpers at all?
You mean come in from outside?
Yeah.
No, except that they had a deal going there that, I don't know if it was once a month, they'd kind of have the mother would take turns and bring in refreshments, and I think we'd play some games like on a Friday afternoon. I think it must have been like once a month. So it was sort of like a little club. And I took those kids, one thing I did go, I think it was a workshop for teachers anyway, we knew about it, that there was a huge anthill. I don't remember how many miles away it was, but I took the kids and we drove over there and got saw the ants, this big anthill, and we had kind of like a fruit jar with some black paper around, and kind of made like a poor man's ant farm, you know, from that time. And then, I'd read a book about, that's when gerbils were new. And there was a kid in Clarinda that raised gerbils. And we went to, I read this book, and then we went to this kid's house and saw his gerbils. That was a new kind of a new pet.
What special rules did your classroom have?
Well, we had the same thing for the outhouse. If somebody else was gone, then you don't go. But again, with a little recess in the morning, a little recess in the afternoon, none of that was ever much of a problem. Besides that, in the winter, who wants to get out in the cold and go down there if you don't have to?
Did you need any discipline techniques?
No, not at all. They knew I would call their moms and dads, I think, probably.
Was lunch hour about pretty much the same?
Pretty much the same,
Pails and-
right?
Except you had a car.
Yeah, we had that old car, that old Pontiac.
How did your lunch change? Still the same peanut butter sandwich?
It was still pretty much the same. I had cold